Assalamualaikum and good day everyone. My name is Elena. I'm from IIUM and today I will present my findings from my study on article errors in the English writing of Chinese undergraduates at the International Islamic University Malaysia. This research highlights persistent challenges with articles and explores the linguistic and pedagogical factors behind these errors. Let me begin with the background of the study. Articles are essential for clarity in English, yet they are difficult for learners whose first language lacks an article system. Mandarin, for example, conveys definiteness and specificity through context rather than morphology, so Chinese learners often transfer this absence into English. This results in frequent omission, substitution, and addition errors. These errors do not just affect grammar, but they reduce coherence, weaken argumentation, and can lower academic performance. Previous studies across Arabic, Turkish, and Chinese learners consistently highlight article misuse as a persistent challenge. This study builds on this body of work by focusing specifically on Chinese undergraduates at IIUM, situating their struggles within both linguistic and pedagogical contexts. This study was guided by two questions. The first research question: which article errors are most frequently committed by Chinese EFL undergraduates at IIUM in their English writing? And the next research question is: what linguistic and pedagogical factors contribute to these article errors among Chinese EFL learners? To investigate these issues, essays from 35 Chinese undergraduates at IIUM were collected. Each student wrote a 300 to 500 word essay on a general topic. This is to ensure natural language use rather than test-style responses. The texts were analysed using Dulé, Bird and Crescent's surface strategy taxonomy, which categorizes errors into omission, substitution, and addition. This framework captures the types of article misuse systematically. To strengthen reliability, two coders independently identified errors and then reached consensus through discussion. This step was crucial to avoid bias and ensure that the error classification was consistent. Altogether, the dataset provided 200 article errors, giving us a robust foundation for analysis. Here we see the distribution of errors across omission, substitution, and addition. Omission errors were the most frequent, making up 41.5% of all cases. Notice that within omission, the definite article the was most often missing, with 558 instances, which is nearly 70% of omissions. This shows learners struggle most with expressing definiteness. Substitution errors accounted for 33.5%. Here, learners often replace one article with another incorrectly, such as using a instead of the. Addition errors made up 25%, where learners inserted articles unnecessarily. Altogether, 200 errors were identified, with the being the most problematic across all categories. This pattern highlights how learners are not only omitting articles, but also misusing them, reflecting both gaps in knowledge and overgeneralization. Let's look at some examples. For omission, a student wrote, "I saw elephant" instead of "I saw an elephant." This shows how learners often drop articles when introducing new nouns. For substitution, we see "a umbrella" instead of "an umbrella." This reflects confusion with vowel sounds and article choice. For addition, one student wrote, this country" instead of simply "this country." Here, the learner overgeneralized the use of the, inserting it where it does not belong. These examples illustrate how article errors are not random. They follow predictable patterns tied to learners' first language and their developing interlanguage system. When we compare these findings with previous studies, we see both similarities and differences. Al-Qadi 2015 found that Arabic learners most often omitted articles, similar to our Chinese learners. At-Makkah 2016, studying Turkish learners, reported addition errors as most common, showing how learners from different L1 backgrounds face distinct challenges. Kian, Li and Cheng 2023 found omission and substitution errors among Chinese learners, which aligns closely with our results. This comparison suggests that while omission is a universal challenge, the specific error types vary depending on the learner's first language. It also reinforces the idea that article acquisition is one of the most persistent difficulties across EFL contexts. So, what are the causes for these errors? Three main causes stand out. First, L1 interference. Mandarin has no article system, so learners transfer this absence into English. For example, definiteness is expressed through word order or context in Mandarin, not through a marker like the. Second, limited exposure. Many learners rely almost exclusively on classroom English, which restricts their opportunities to see articles used naturally in authentic contexts. Without immersion, they do not internalize article rules. Third, instructional gaps. Articles are often underemphasized in curricula compared to tense, vocabulary, or sentence structure. Teachers may assume articles are simple, but in reality, they require explicit attention. Together, these factors explain why article errors persist even at higher proficiency levels. These findings have clear implications for teaching. First, articles should be taught explicitly, not assumed to be absorbed incidentally. Rules for definiteness, specificity, and countability need to be explained with examples. Second, contrastive activities can help by showing learners both correct and incorrect usage side by side, raises awareness of subtle differences. Third, greater exposure to authentic texts, such as academic articles, newspapers, or novels, can provide natural models of article use. Finally, corrective feedback is essential. Without feedback, errors risk becoming fossilized, meaning they persist even after years of study. By integrating these strategies, teachers can help learners gradually overcome article difficulties. Future research could expand the sample size to include multiple universities, conduct longitudinal studies to track fossilization, and test specific teaching interventions to see which strategies most effectively reduce article errors. In conclusion, articles remain a persistent challenge for Chinese EFL learners. Omission errors are the most frequent, with the definite article the being the hardest to master. These errors are shaped by L1 transfer, limited exposure, and instructional gaps. However, they are not insurmountable. With explicit teaching, contrastive practice, authentic input, and corrective feedback, learners can improve their accuracy and clarity in academic writing. This study not only highlights the problem, but also points toward practical solutions that can make a real difference in the classroom. This concludes my presentation. Thank you so much for your time and attention.